That scene is like burned into my brain. When Kaladin said that and jumped down to help Adeline, that is like peak fantasy. That's honestly probably my favorite scene ever. What's up, y'all? I'm Jax, and I like to read. I really like to read the Stormlight Archive. It is the first fantasy series, like the first big epic scale kind of fantasy series that I read when I got back into reading. I absolutely love it. I will preface this by saying that I love all 5 books. I just love some more than others. So let's talk about it. Let's rank the Stormlight Archive. Starting at number 5, we have Wind and Truth. Wind and Truth was really interesting to me. I loved the countdown to Dalinar's contest. The whole Shinovar expedition with Kaladin and Seth was great. I absolutely loved that arc. I didn't really love how it ended, but it is what it is. The spiritual realm exploration that Navani was going through was really cool. And then just the whole mystery of the Dead Eyes with Adolin and Shallan was incredibly interesting. It just felt somewhat unorganized. I don't want to say that it felt rushed or anything, but it just felt like there was a lot of kind of weird things that were inputted into the story that didn't really make a lot of sense or weren't really necessary. It just felt a little off. Didn't really feel like totally Stormlight. And I think that that is probably because this was really the ultimate tie-in of Stormlight to the Cosmere. A lot of people say that this doesn't feel like a Stormlight book, it feels like a Cosmere book, which I think is totally fair. And another one of the reasons why this is at the bottom of my list. I'm one of the people who haven't read the entire Cosmere yet. I've read a lot, so I wasn't completely lost during this book, but there's a lot that ties to things that I haven't read yet. So I don't know, maybe my advice for this would be read the entire Cosmere before, which is a lot to ask because people come into this series to read Stormlight, not necessarily to read the Cosmere. So it was a little weird placing that much emphasis on the Cosmere and the underlying workings and the impact on this grander universe within an individual series within the universe, if that makes sense. 4th on my list is Oathbringer, Dalinar's book, as we so love to reference it as. I love this book, okay? I'm going to say that again. I loved all of these books. Oathbringer is next on my list. And it was awesome. I mean, the whole coalition at Urethru was really cool. Just learning more about Urethru in general was pretty awesome. Dalinar's book, I mean, all of his flashbacks, his confrontation with what happened with Evie, all that stuff was incredible. And then the big battle at Thaylen City was, I mean, just incredible. With the Sander Lantern, that one was awesome. Dalinar becoming a bondsmith, uniting the different realms. I mean, it was undeniably a really cool book. I honestly just didn't really super love all of the like Pershendi stuff. I didn't really like it throughout most of the book. I thought it was just lingered on for way too long. And that was really my only problem with this book, is the fact that those parts dragged on. Everything else, pretty much really cool. I like Dalinar's, kind of conflict with the Thrill. I thought that was a really interesting part of this. I really liked his whole situation with the Night Watcher. I really liked that, and the reason he can't say Evie's name and all that stuff was incredibly interesting. It pains me to put this at 4 because it doesn't make my top 3, and I think it's a great book. It's just, it's like all these books though, it's really hard to rank these. That brings me to the 3rd book on my list, for officially my top 3 Stormlight books. I'm going to put Rhythm of War in my 3 spot. I made a video recently where I said that this was the worst Stormlight book, and it's just upon further reflection, I really sat down and thought about it to make this list, and there was a lot that I was forgetting about in Rhythm of War, so I apologize. The thing that makes Rhythm of War stick out for me is I loved Navani and Raboniel, whatever, however you want to say that. I loved their exploration of the Fabrial sciences and the Stormlight science. I mean, that was so fun. I'm an engineer, as most of you probably know by now. So that was really awesome because we learned way more about how Stormlight works, how it flows, how it, all these different things, how the Fabrials pull on Stormlight, and then how the Pershendi, how they manipulate Stormlight. I just thought that that was amazing. And I think that all the Pershendi moments were so much better in this book relative to Oathbringer. I just thought we learned a lot more, and there wasn't as much like, okay, cool, but why does it matter? It felt like a lot of this mattered in terms of setting up. It feels like this was a book that honestly should have been earlier. I mean, it was cool that we found out later kind of more about how Stormlight works and all that stuff, now that we have a base for what people can do with it. Like, we know what Kaladin can do with it, but why? Why does it move the way it does? Why can he take in Stormlight, white, and, other times he can't? Now we kind of know that after this book, and I just thought that was an incredibly interesting exploration of the science behind the magic. And like I said, I love that this this magic is kind of based in science. Like, there's a lot of physics principles that are somewhat followed, like enough to make it reasonable. Like the flow, right? Hot to cold, things of that nature is, I think, full to empty, whatever it was. It's like stuff that kind of makes sense in a physical world, but for your magic system, just unbelievably cool. And then Kaladin going through the tower, basically being a vigilante, and like Kaladin Wayne, he's basically Batman, and he's going through there. Like, unbelievably cool. That part was awesome. The Kaladin parts where he's like dealing with his PTSD and stuff is really interesting for his character, but it does kind of drag. And that's the only issue I've ever had with Kaladin's character, is like wholly whiny. Like, you know what I mean? And I get that he has all these issues and stuff, and that's totally fair. It's just like, do we really need to explore that as much as we do? Like, we get it, Brandon. You can stop hitting us over the head with it. Kaladin's depressed. We understand that. So that's my only issue with this book. That's probably why, the next two books, you know what they are. Those books are absolutely phenomenal. But the reason that this one would never pass them is because it has a lot of those slower moments with Kaladin. And then some of the kind of technology parts do drag a little bit, but I really liked him. I can see why a lot of people wouldn't find him as interesting, but I did, and that's why this is ranked at 3, ahead of Oathbringer. The two are very close, but that whole exploration with Navani, and I love Navani as a character, so that whole explanation, or that whole part, puts it above Oathbringer for me. Number 2, who's it going to be between The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance? I'm going to give the slight edge to The Way of Kings. So book number 2 in my Stormlight ranking is The Words of Radiance. Now, both of these books are incredible. They're like 1A, 1B. Let's stick with Words of Radiance for now. This is kind of Shallan's book, if you will. Her whole light weaving thing, the whole arc with Jasna. Come on. That stuff was absolutely fantastic. Dalinar working to unite all the High Princes is absolutely awesome. Kind of formation of the Knights Radiant, with, what's his name, Amaram. And then Kaladin fighting Seth, becoming captain of the Royal Guard. This book is just filled with so much cool stuff. And I haven't even mentioned the coolest part of this entire series, Honor is Dead, I'll see what I can do. That scene is like burned into my brain. When Kaladin said that and jumped down to help Adolin, that is like peak fantasy. That's honestly probably my favorite scene ever. I was reading Words of Radiance. I was on my Kindle, and I was just like, yeah, Kaladin, let's go. And he goes in there and just, no shard plate, no nothing. Goes in there, turns the tide in Adolin's favor. Just unbelievably cool. And then, of course, you've got the whole threat of the Everstorm and the Pershendi, or, getting up to things. It's just like, there's so much good about this book. And I really did, I don't know, this, like I said, it's 1A, 1B. I don't have a lot bad to say about this book. I really don't. The Way of Kings takes the cake for me because it was the entryway into this fantastic world. And I think it's just the fact that The Way of Kings was the first book that I read where I was like, holy crap, like this is what fantasy can really be, like epic, large-scale fantasy. And it just hooked me to the genre, so it's always going to have that special place in my heart. Plus, The Way of Kings is fantastic, okay? It's not just the nostalgic factor that puts it over Words of Radiance for me. It's unbelievable. I didn't even mention from Words of Radiance when Kaladin and Shallan are in the chasms. Love that. Anyway, back to The Way of Kings. you have Kaladin's whole arc from slave to basically leader of Bridge Crew 4. The Bridge Crew stuff is some of the best fantasy I've ever read. I mean, Kaladin basically protecting those guys and getting them to bond with each other is incredible. And then the end where Dalinar proves himself to be a good guy. He's not just like every other Light Eyes, and he gives up his shard blade. I literally could not believe that when I read it, because it was like, there's nothing more valuable than shard blades, shard plate. No one would ever get rid of them in their right mind. And Dalinar does it for a bunch of slaves, which is everything that we have been taught to think a High Prince or any Light Eyes would ever do. I was flabbergasted in the best way. And like I said, the Bridge Crew stuff, I mean, that really is like the heart and soul of this series, I feel like, is that Bridge Crew and Kaladin and him overcoming all of his issues and him just being awesome. And you get to meet all the cast, and it's just, I always have a soft spot for book 1 in series, and The Way of Kings is a big reason for that. I absolutely love it. So there we go. I could talk about these books for hours, and honestly, I will probably do like an in-depth review of each. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to want to reread them, because this is stuff that's mostly pulled from my head of what I remember. I'm sure I'm missing some important stuff, but it's a good recap, and I was able to, look a few things up here and there to make sure that my order was what I felt. To recap that order: number 5, Wind and Truth; Oathbringer; Rhythm of War; Words of Radiance; The Way of Kings. Okay? That's my list. Let me know what you think of that list. Does yours differ? Am I crazy for putting Rhythm of War above Oathbringer? I'm sure some folks are going to say that. And then I'm also sure some folks are going to be like, yes, Rhythm of War getting the love it deserves. So you can't make everybody happy, but this is the order that made me happy. I hope you can respect it, at least, given the explanations I gave. I'm pretty happy with this list. Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, Rhythm of War, Oathbringer, Wind and Truth. Not quite in publication order, but pretty close. I think that's pretty general consensus. A lot of folks think that the books start super hot and then they kind of go down. I'm hoping that Sanderson kind of picks things back up and makes it amazing again in this, second, what do you call that? A quintology for 5 books? Quintilogy? I don't know. 5 books. We got another 5. Yeah. I know Stormlight Archive is unbelievably popular, and rightfully so. Like I mentioned, let me know what your order is down below, and I will see you in the next video.